Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Red Raptor Writes. Just a few weeks ago, I gave my thoughts on the Netflix show Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, but that was a few days before the 4th season released. Now that it's here, I've seen a ton of mixed opinions online. Not to be a follower, but I'm on the same boat. Season 4 had plenty of good ideas, but with some bad ideas and bad executions tossed in there. No season of CC has ever been perfect, but the cracks are far more apparent here. If you're a fan of the series, then you probably still enjoyed it like I did, but there is a lot to unpack here. So without further delay, let's dig this up. As always, we should start with the positives, mostly because I don't want the first impression of being a cynical jerk. Well, I am, but you don't need to know that. Say what you want about this show, and trust me I will, but nobody can claim that the creators play it safe. CC is definitely willing to take risks, trying many new things, maybe even to a fault. I love both Yaz's and Ben's respective arcs here. Ben learning to open up to new dinosaurs after losing Bumpy was kind of touching, and I'm sure many viewers can relate to that. But Yaz, man, Yaz is the GOAT of the season. Actually, she's the GOAT of every season with the exception of Kenji, but Kenji is occupied for the moment, so she takes a clear lead. In episode 4, we learn that Yaz is dealing with what can only be described as post-traumatic stress. She keeps experiencing night terrors and reliving stressful moments. This is a perfect place to go with her character, since she had the most epic run to save Sammy's life last season. You can't just run back and forth across an island getting chased by monstrous hybrids to save your dying friend's life, and not have that haunt you forever. The inclusion of PTSD also adds some super serious and much needed consequences. Obviously, main characters aren't going to die in a TVY7 show, but this is the next best thing. Constantly stalling to help dinosaurs, being selfless all the time comes with a price. Just because no one's dying doesn't mean we don't get stakes. Having those stakes and consequences make the show feel more mature and grounded. Also, after 3 seasons of dodging dinosaurs in the jungle, we now get dinos and robots in a variety of new environments. Changing up the setting is a nice change of pace, allowing for more unique visuals. Here we see a wide variety of biomes to keep it fresh, like a desert, boreal forest, tundra, swamp, and some more jungle. In the Jurassic franchise, we're used to those tropical rainforests, with the exception of the severely underrated Lost World, but introducing new settings also pays off. In my last video on Camp Cretaceous, I complimented the 180 turn in direction from the movies regarding the dinosaurs. CC didn't make main dinosaur protagonists like Fallen Kingdom, and it still doesn't here. The dinos aren't good guy protagonists, but just animals. Many animalistic behaviors are on display. One of the first encounters we see are a mama and daughter T-Rex playing with each other. That's cool, I guess. My mom just likes watching those really bad Hallmark Christmas movies, so yeah, pray for me guys. Later on, there's the Kencho v T-Rex smackdown, where they clearly don't want a gruesome battle to the death like Jurassic Fight Club, but are being forced together by drones. Still a better outcome than Afghanistan though. Dr. Turner was another neat addition to the main roster. She gets a fair deal of chemistry with Darius since they're both obsessed with dinosaurs. Plus her character is so far the most sensible adult in the show, not a super sketchy mercenary, idiot white guy who needs a stronger woman, or a mustache-twirling villain. Nah, May is a simple scientist who's on Manticore's island to research the dinos, which, strangely enough, is a role that's been severely lacking from the series lately. Like, seriously, if extinct animals came back to life, you'd expect somebody to study them, without wanting to turn them into military weapons. And the last positive I'll mention is the level of fan service, which is quite high. Not Snoop Dogg high, but still high with the return of Spinosaurus and Dilophosaurus, 2 fan favorites that have been severely missed by fans. There's no explanation as to whether this is the same Spino from 3, but at least it seems less maniacal and antagonistic than before. Oh, also, Season 4 pretty much debunks the whole Spino as a hybrid theory. After the whole 2014 debacle, when Dr. Ibrahim showed how they had shorter hind limbs, some fans tried to justify the movies by claiming that 3 Spinosaurus was the first hybrid dinosaur and that's why it's inaccurate. No, stop. Just stop. Science has, in many ways, moved on since the 90s and early 2000s, but there's no need to keep retconning the series to try to make it appear more accurate. That clearly wasn't the film's original intention. Is it so hard to say that dinosaurs are different in-universe than in the real world? That's not a criticism of the movies, that's just the way it is. But of course, there's always someone in the comments who will try to bring up the Dr. Wu quote that nothing in Jurassic World is natural, which is a total cop-out that completely contradicts the previous movies, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a video for another day. Anyway, yeah, when we're introduced to the Spinoceratopses, we see that they're part Sinoceratops and part Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus picture shown looks like the Jurassic version, not the real-life Spino. If it was a hybrid, then wouldn't they have to list the dino DNA that went into the Spino too? If not, then that would add unnecessary confusion to what's actually in Spinoceratops. Basically, I'm saying it would be hybrid inception, a hybrid within a hybrid. Plus, Darius isn't confused when he sees the Spino, as if that's not what it should look like. Maybe the stress of the moment negated that, but it's still worth pointing out. Okay, I've gone on way too long about this. The theory makes a nice segue into the negatives though. While seeing the Spinosaurus was a nice injection of nostalgia, why was it given only generic big dinosaur roars and snarls? We never got that classic JP3 roar that goes something like this. So the fan service felt incomplete, at least for me. Spinosaurus isn't the only holdover from Jurassic Park 3. Unfortunately, some of the poor storytelling crosses over too. In the movie, a lot of fascinating questions get raised like, where did these new dinosaurs come from? Who created them? Why were they created? What happened to all the creators? And why is there seemingly more infrastructure than before? All great questions, but with zero answers. I wouldn't be surprised if J.J. Abrams secretly worked on 3 and Season 4. They build no shortage of mysteries, but never bothered to answer any of their own questions. Camp Cretaceous is falling into that trap. Okay, we've answered who the president of Manticore is. Good question, satisfying answer, but what about everything else? Why does Manticore have a secret island right next to their rival's island and in between them and the mainland too? A route that we know is very much utilized since our rivals came to Jurassic World by boat. When was Manticore taking dinosaurs off Sorna? How did they get away with this operation? Why are they sending child spies to steal DNA when they have access to Sorna? Or can't they just get samples from the petting zoo? Actually, Jurassic World is destroyed at this point. Why don't they just go to Jurassic World? What's the point of making Spinoceratops? Is it just for unique combatants? Because the only changes we see to the Sino are the sail and the eyes. What is even the point of the Brad X's? We know the Brads maintain the enclosures, secure the facility, and execute basic commands, but why upgrade to these weird Brad X's? I'm sure there are more questions fans have, but that's just off the top of my head. While I appreciated Yaz like always and Ben, the other characters aren't so fortunate. Time to discuss the elephant in the room, Kenji and Brooklyn's relationship. This comes completely out of nowhere. Kenji was friends with everyone. He's the best, but there was never any chemistry there. It reminds me of Age of Ultron with Banner and Natasha. They force an unnecessary relationship that didn't exist previously, but then expect audiences to hop on board when it's randomly introduced as if it was always a thing. To the show's credit, there is a slow build-up to try to make it feel natural. It isn't, but they sure try. It's also kind of weird considering Brooklyn is supposed to be 13 and Kenji is 16. For teenagers, the age difference is a little extreme. Well, 3 years doesn't make much of a difference to adults. No one cares if a 30-year-old dates a 33-year-old, but when you're younger, the rift becomes more noticeable, especially in terms of maturity. I don't know if I'm making sense. Maybe I've just become a cynical old coot, but I know nobody clicked on the video for life advice. So let's continue to Sammy, who gets sidelined again. It often feels like Camp Cretaceous doesn't know what to do with her character. She's usually kind of just there, which is especially disappointing this season because, well, now we're dealing with Manticore, who she used to work for. Sammy has a history with Cash, who hired her to spy. If anything, they should have been used as foils for each other. This should have been her season to shine, but no. All the Cash interactions are given to Darius. Heck, he doesn't even learn about Sammy being there until the very end. That's a huge wasted opportunity for a character who desperately needed it. The same goes with Dr. Turner, who is an active participant in the plot at first, but gets sidelined halfway through due to an injury, relegating her to an exposition machine. That brings us to Cash, who is very one note. Like, really, that's all there is to say about him. He's just the raging nerd. There's no depth, no complications of any kind, no growth. He's just a very bland antagonist. The writers could have made him actually care about Darius, and I thought they would have bonded over the Jurassic World video game, but nah, he just rages again and cheats until he wins. Heck, Cash threatens to kill Darius several times because everyone knows that wanting money, recognition, or promotion instantly translates into child murder. Gosh, I miss Roland, easily the best villain of the franchise. He was an antagonist, but an onion too. He had layers. Cash is just bleh. There's also this tiny subplot introduced about Darius' brother leaving to find him. It's relegated to only 2 tiny scenes, so you can imagine how far that goes. If that's the plan, then it should have been saved for next season because it's so minute that audiences are gonna need a flashback reminder.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
While watching, I also couldn't help but notice that there are a buttload of plot conveniences and contrivances. Many situations will just randomly occur at just the wrong time to delay our protagonist multiple times. Heck, the entire season is one major plot contrivance. What are the odds of their boat specifically being attacked by the Mosasaurus only to wreck on Manticore's experimental island? Plot contrivances get the campers into these situations, and many plot conveniences get them out, like the Spino killing the Smilodon. While yes, these kinds of things happen often in entertainment, overuse feels like lazy writing. Writers put themselves into a corner and need a quick way to get out. Plus, suspension of disbelief will wear out eventually. Lastly, I've seen a lot of complaints regarding the Brads and crazy new technology. While it is refreshing to introduce new threats rather than just running from dinos, I have to agree that Season 4 starts feeling off-brand. Maybe some helper robots and drones here and there would have been okay. It feels as if the show is leaning too far in the evil robot direction. This change might have been alright if the story and characters were still great, but with a few exceptions, they're not. Plain and simple. Overall, I find myself agreeing with the many mixed feelings on Camp Cretaceous Season 4. The amount of positives and negatives seem to balance each other out, so it isn't necessarily bad, but not very good either. We have to admit that the writers took many risks, perhaps too many though. I'd rather have writers who try than make mistakes, rather than those who play it safe. So I'm not mad, I'm not upset, but Season 4 could have been much better. It probably ranks as the lowest of CC, which still isn't a bad place to be. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to please leave a like, subscribe, and check out my social media. See you next time.